everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Gina from Gina Makes It. In today's video, I am going to talk a little bit about my new spring journal and also kind of the process that I go through when I'm starting to create a new journal. It first starts off with me gathering all of my materials that I know that I want to use inside of my journal. And so really it kind of starts a little bit before that, and it starts with an idea of a theme, or if it's not really a theme, then an overall sort of look that I want to achieve with a journal. And for this one, it was definitely a very soft and sort of romantic, very feminine journal. And I decided to sit down and create some digitals that would kind of speak to this feeling that I was having towards the end of February and the beginning days of March. And so I created this kit called Awakening that is actually a mix of vintage florals, vintage artwork, some inspirational messages that kind of speak to this whole idea of one awakening within themselves. So she dreamt in color. She was beautiful deep down to her soul. She is everything all at once. These sort of inspirational type messages. When she smiled, the flowers danced, that I've just been feeling as I begin to prepare my garden, as I begin to prepare all of the rites of passage for spring that are so beautiful and so awakening to the soul. So I do print things out on both matte photo paper and a linen cotton blend paper. So I do it both ways. I print out all the cut aparts that and the embellishments that I know that I want to use. And I don't really know which version I'm going to use. This is on a linen cotton blend, and you can see it's a little bit muted. She lives the poetry she cannot write. You can sort of see the lines. This paper works beautifully when you're printing out stationery, or if you're printing out vintage wallpaper, which is exactly what this is. It almost looks like a textured wallpaper, and sometimes that's the image or the feeling that I kind of want to get from a page, but other times I want something that's a little bit more bold. Let's see, this one. You can see how incredibly bold the colors are in the flowers. There's a lot of contrast, a lot of bright areas and dark areas in the picture itself. These florals are jumping off the page. The blue is a super bright blue, and it is a very bright white paper that is being printed on. And so it really gives you a feeling of brightness and aliveness, whereas this is a little bit more muted. So I print them both ways, and I trim them down generally because I don't know how I'm going to use them in my journal. Once I have all of my materials printed, trimmed, and cut out, that's when I start on the assembly of the journal itself. And for this one, I actually used some cardboard that I had just from packaging, old cereal boxes, granola bar boxes, packaging that comes inside of a shirt, like a men's shirt. There's a cardboard piece. It's a very thin cardboard piece, and that's basically what I used for the construction of this journal. Another thing that I also always do is pull out any sort of laces or fabrics that I know that I'm going to want to use, or I have the possibility of using. Some old vintage, sort of more on the cream side. This is an edge of a vintage pillowcase that I just cut, and I actually use it as a pocket inside of here. But you can see these are the types of materials that I really like to use when I am in the beginning stages of planning my journal. This journal actually uses the method that I used a couple videos ago, where I am not sewing anything, but I am using sort of a scraps to hinge the binding. And I'll link that video down below in case you're interested in seeing how I did those journals. Now they are on a smaller scale, but I just adapted that technique to a larger scale. So these are actually two different signatures that are glued together right on the edge, and then they're also attached using this vintage doily. The front is that page that I just showed you, and it's folded here right after this wallpaper branding on the side, you can see, and then it folds over to create sort of a half page cover and a longer full page back. So that's actually how I did that. And then I just added another layer like that size to the front. I always love to add a "this journal belongs to" piece to the beginning of all of my journals, and I was feeling so romantic that I decided to make some different floral ones. And these are in my Etsy store, and they are called, I believe, floral journal plates. So kind of the same idea as a book plate, but these are journal plates. And I kind of varied it up. So for instance, I would write Gina's journal over that. This journal belongs to Gina Testa, and then the date. So that's kind of how I imagined these. And I just thought that this purple lilac-y one was so beautiful, and the color matched this tea-dyed textured tracing paper so well that I thought that I would add that there. Now, I do want to preface this with, I believe I'm going to use this journal as a writing journal. So I really tried to create a lot of spaces on the inside to facilitate the ability to write. And so one thing that I really cannot stand as I'm working in a journal is if I have to search my craft room for items to use when all I want to do is get some thoughts out. And so I really tried to think ahead and add some spots and some areas that would facilitate me writing without having to do much. So for instance, this is a little tuck spot here that I added that some old vintage stationery paper could be added to if I wanted to do a little bit of journaling there. I thought that these two pages went together so well because of the blue and the flowers. And I just love this "like wildflowers she blooms" because I felt that that really aligned with this whole idea of awakening. And just so you can see how this was actually used, you can see this is that piece of paper, and it's just included as a little quarter page, I would say. And then if we flip all the way to the back area, you'll see that's where the other part of the page actually is. So it's just fun constructing these types of journals. It takes a little bit of time and it takes a little bit of thought, but it really comes together, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's like a puzzle. You're just trying to see where everything fits. So the next page is a little signature unto itself. It's a little hiding place, and this is a piece of ephemera that I printed on that photo mat paper, and I lined the back with some writing paper so I can easily write something down there. But I wanted to show you the difference in the color when I print on a linen cotton blend and I print on a premium photo paper. There is a big difference. one is not better than the other, but it's just different. I did want to use this one, even though, gosh, this does look beautiful on top of it. I did want to use this one just because it was a little bit more sturdy and I didn't want it flopping around. Now, if I wanted to use this one, I could have easily backed it with some sort of a cardstock to make it a little bit more substantial in nature. So here is this little flip out. So it flips open to here, and here's another piece of ephemera from the kit that I backed. I kind of embossed and I backed with some antique magazine paper and I taped it to the side here. I'll probably do some journaling on there, and this is another one of those pages, and I just sort of wrapped some chiffon ribbon around the edge as a little textural detail. I have one page here. This is a beautiful vintage wallpaper that I printed on some cotton linen paper, and this is from another kit that I just added to my Etsy store called Floral Vintage Papers or something like that. I'll link that listing down below too. I have a couple that I used in here. This is just some old drawing paper that I added to this page. And then I also have another area to write on, and this is a piece of ephemera from that awakening kit that I added some beautiful antique lace to the edge of it. But you can see I'm really prepped this whole journal to be very, very inclusive of writing. Fold that back over, and then we have this middle portion that we can do whatever we want with. This will be interesting to see how this comes together and how I utilize this. So here is that flap. There is my piece of ephemera, and now we're sort of back into the middle of the journal. And so this is what I'm calling another signature, and I've started with some antique magazine paper that had some beautiful embroidered articles, and I just thought it would be so lovely to include inside of this journal. I cut apart a piece of vintage stationery that I had, and I just glued it to the edge here to once again sort of facilitate the ability to write in this journal. So on the next page is that other side of that antique magazine page, and I just added some lace to the bottom to create a pocket, and I added a little embellishment here from some scraps that I had laying around. Now this pocket will be good to tuck journaling into, or pictures, or whatever it is that I want to. So here is another page that is actually glued to the back of this antique magazine page, another one. I just can't stop with these antique, and it's from the same article. You can see it has those embroidered doilies. It's an article about how to create them yourself. And here is another focal point, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do here, but I'll probably add some sort of more embellishments to this page to sort of accompany the writing that will go on to this page. So here is a spread that has some ribbon across the upper portion of the page with some of that antique lace to create like a belly band of sorts. And then I also just tucked some stationery, and this is from my Etsy store as well. It's just some fun vintage inspired stationery that I printed on that linen paper that I can use to write a letter or tuck some pictures into or anything. And I just thought that the rose was so beautiful. There's a daisy and a leaf version, but I just thought the rose just was very fitting for this page. So on the next page is that other side of that spread that I was talking about before, and I added some vintage lace to the bottom to tuck some of the ephemera from the kit in there. Don't know what I'll end up using it for, but for right now, that seems to be a really good spot to tuck this. And I also added some of these journaling spots. These are vintage hankies that I had scanned, and it is in my Etsy store, and I just printed them on the cotton linen paper and I fussy cut them out, and I thought this would be a beautiful spot to write on. And also on the back there's also another ability to write or keep some pictures or some mementos or whatever it is that you would want. The edge of these vintage hankies, there's a little white edge, and so I just fold it over and glue it that way. So now we're sort of at the end of this first or second signature, and we come into a whole nother portion of the journal that is sort of hidden. So this is the back of that first part. This is that pillowcase that I created, a beautiful little pocket, and I made these sweet little tags and I backed them with one of the papers from the kit that I'll use as embellishments on the pages, but I just thought in the meantime to keep them tucked into this little pocket for right now was just really the perfect spot for them. This little medallion is so sweet. So here we have half of one of those pages that I showed you earlier with those vibrant flowers. And then we open up to a beautiful vintage wallpaper that is part of that new floral paper kit in my Etsy store. And I just added a little drawing paper flap, and I did some embossing with some spackle, actually, which I know is a very common technique. Mine was actually pink and it dries white, which is funny to see it dry white. And I added some lace to the bottom, and this is just some pattern paper that I cut a pattern out. I was making something for my daughter and this was left over, and I thought I am going to do some embossing on there. You could see it was folded when I did it and I didn't know, but I just think it adds to the whimsy of the overall image itself. And so then on the second page, this is the other half of that drawing paper that I folded over. I did some embossing and I added this frame over this woman who says she lives the poetry she cannot write. Now, I did show you this earlier on a cotton linen paper, and I just want to show you the difference. I don't know if you can see the difference on camera, but there's much more depth with the premium matte photo paper than there is. It's a softer, more blurred image on the cotton linen paper. The flowers are more vibrant and more colorful, and they're a little bit more muted on here. I wanted something that had a little bit more depth to it, and so that's why I ended up using the photo matte paper. This is just a beautiful vintage watercolor over part of a little story that is also included in the kit, and I just added some vintage lace around the perimeter of it to just add a little bit more detail to this page. Again, these pages will most likely be utilized for writing, and so there's plenty of places for me to add some special notes. So this page is included in that floral vintage paper kit, and I just created a pocket down at the bottom to add some more of the ephemera, added some more writing paper there. This is a pocket that I cut out from the kit that I haven't really found a place for yet, but I'm sure that I will. But I thought I would just keep it in this pocket. And then these are some of those vintage hanky journaling spots that I printed out that I know I will be utilizing somewhere inside of this journal. So here's the other half of that signature in the beginning. So there it is. And I added some little vintage lace to kind of join these two sides together. This is the last page, which is, it's kind of confusing, but it actually is one of the middle pages over here. And this is half of one of the pages in the kit. And I thought that this reminded me of like an old Moroccan door or something. I don't know, just the shape of this. And so I actually fussy cut it and I left this not glued, and I glued the other part down, and I added some embossed drawing paper, and then I glued a part of this sheet music cover to the inside. And I just thought that was a really beautiful way to utilize it. Now I'm imagining some sort of an applique or a photo or a poem on this page right here. And so that's why I left it blank, because I have inspiration, but I just don't have exactly what it is just yet. And so that will come through the journaling process. So I added some vintage lace to the back. Here is a empty page, and this is the flap from the overall cover that I'm going to show you how that helps in keeping the whole journal closed. I added a piece of sparkly ribbon that came off of something else that just happened to be sitting on the side of my craft table, and this is what it looks like closed. So if I just open up that little spot and I tuck this, and this I think will be a wonderful spot to write some notes on, or maybe do some sort of a scalloped cut on the edge. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. It just shuts that way. And then I'll open this up so you can see. So there are the two signatures, and then on the back, oh my gosh, I just love this. It says, "When she smiled, the flowers danced." And I just absolutely love this. Is a piece of vintage fabric that I scanned, and it is just so, so beautiful. I actually have it here, and as I was printing it out again, I thought, gosh, wouldn't these be just lovely fussy cut and then added to the page, which I think I probably might end up doing. So that's the back of it, and there's that vintage doily. Now, of course, this is going to grow. This journal is definitely going to get thicker and thicker, but there's enough room in it that it won't be too cumbersome as it grows and as I add all of the wonderful things inside of it that I want to. So I hope that you are finding inspiration as the seasons change. I know not everyone is in the northern hemisphere like I am, and so you're experiencing a different type of change than we are up here. But regardless, the change is a beautiful thing to witness. As always, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.